In Hirohiko Araki's book, Manga in Theory and Practice, The Craft of Creating Manga, Araki goes over the basic, fundamental principles of what makes good manga. He dives into his own personal story of how his own work kept getting denied, and because of this, he had to boil down the main functions of what makes someone turn the page of your manga. That's what I want to explore today. When you pick up one of the dozens of new manga that come out in a year, whether it's through Weekly Shonen Jump or even through an online chapter that someone posted, what elements does good manga have that make you want to turn the page? In this video, I want to go over some of the rules that Araki lays out in his book and use real-life examples of ones that follow these guidelines. What's really amazing is that this man, who's now most famous for JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, says that he had about 500 pages of material that was denied. That's insane. You never really think of successful people failing at their attempts to enter the industry. A man who was and is a cornerstone in the manga industry has had a mountain of rejection. He admits that it probably wasn't that good, and because the editors who read these incoming manga read about a dozen entries a day, they were probably right to deny him. But through him being able to boil down his formula, he will tell you that it all begins on the first page. If the editor or reader doesn't read past your first page, you're toast. Sometimes editors will just read the first page and put it back on the envelope. While this might seem unfair, realize that these editors do this work every single day, and if someone isn't able to get the first page right, then it's probably an indicator of what the rest of the chapter will be, and further, they don't understand how important the first page is. So how does good manga get you to read past that first page? The first piece of advice that Araki gives is regarding the title. Does it invoke imagination? Is it something that would make you want to pick it up off the shelf? If you look at JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, for example, you could understand that if someone is looking at a bookshelf, there's a sense of, ooh, wait, what is this? What adventure? What makes it bizarre? It's unlike how we normally speak and it grabs your attention. He also recommends using character names in the title, so in the above case, who is JoJo? Or if you look at other series, who is Naruto? What is the One Piece? Who are the Titans from Attack on Titan? You want to learn more. Second, you need to find something that's uniquely yours. Araki goes into how his first published work, Poker Under Arms, was a western, and at that time there was only one other series that was in that genre, Koya no Shonen Isamu, or Isam Go into the Wild West. He felt that he could diversify his work enough and make it his own so he'd be able to stand out. He also recommends seizing unclaimed territory. How will you make your own work stand out from others in the same setting or genre? If there's another ninja saga, how do you make yours better and more interesting? It's after these basic pieces that Araki goes more into the hard and fast rules. One of the must-have rules in the book is 5W1H, standing for who is doing what, when and where, why, and how. This will give you your characters, setting, motivation, things to look forward to, etc. But he also warns that if you follow this too closely, you'll start to realize that your work will start to look the same as other artists. How does one avoid this? It comes from a combination of things, and the first of which we'll talk about is making sure that your pictures are fulfilling multiple purposes. If you look at a picture, it's going to portray multiple things. How can you get your picture to tell us multiple things about them? If you have a picture that doesn't tell you a lot, how can you improve it? What things can be added that let you into the story and give you hints or information about the world around it? Here with this example, look at Goku. Look how happy he is. He's small and not very defined. He's a child. You get an air of innocence and glee from him. His face and limbs are rounded. Even his once normally spiky hair is blown back in the wind, which smooths it out. But don't just look at Goku. What else do you see? For me, my eye is drawn to the path that Goku took on the flying Nimbus, the cloud that he's riding on. You see that he's gone extraordinarily far and fast based on the path in the background. He shot across from the horizon and past a large amount of the landscape. I can tell that he's near a beach in a tropical area. It's sunny out, even though I can't see the sun itself. I can also bet that it's his first time using it or testing it out, considering his expression and that he's cheering. You don't cheer every time you get in your car and drive down the highway, but you were probably pretty happy the first time you did. So from that, we've automatically and without really thinking about it, realized that we've met the 5W1H rule from earlier. While it took a little bit to articulate, you probably put those pieces together in your head in a split second. The who is Goku, the what is him flying across the air, the when is during the day, the where is near a beach or a tropical place, the why is to test it out or to have fun, and finally the how is through the use of this cloud. It looks like he's already mastered how to use it and isn't having any issues. If your panels and drawings can exhibit this, then you are clearly and firmly ahead of the competition. The next piece to avoid in making sure that your manga doesn't appear too stale or too formulaic is by having your own sense of individuality. Now, this one's a lot harder to describe, it's kind of a subjective concept, but what is individuality in manga? For me, the biggest part is making sure that your story doesn't seem too familiar, or in some cases, appearing to be carbon copies of other manga. Here are a few examples. First, let's look at Attack on Titan, and another series that's just started in Shonen Jump, Kaiju number 8. We'll start with Attack on Titan. The world of Attack on Titan has powerful and deadly creatures called Titans, which are a threat to humanity. The main character, Eren Yeager, wants to stop them and joins a group called the Survey Corps, an organization whose job is to study and destroy Titans. Eren's plan is complicated though. After surviving an attack from an enemy Titan, he learns that he can turn into one as well. He then uses this new power to fight against the monstrosities attacking humanity. But it seems that someone else has the same power as him and has infiltrated humanity for the Titans. Now let's look at Kaiju number 8. The world of Kaiju number 8 has powerful and deadly creatures called Kaiju, which are a threat to humanity. The main character, Kafka Hibino, wants to stop them and joins a group called the Defense Force, an organization whose job is to study and destroy Kaiju. Kafka's plan is complicated though. After surviving an attack from an enemy Kaiju, he learns that he can turn into one as well. He then uses this new power to fight against the monstrosities attacking humanity. But it seems that someone else has the same power as him and has infiltrated humanity for the Kaiju. Hey, wait a minute! I'll defend Kaiju number 8 very quickly in that it does vary in some ways from the main cast of Attack on Titan. It has different transitions into the Defense Force. Each character started in a different place. And there's also the fact that it's still under 10 chapters at the time of recording this video. It still has a lot of time and opportunity to diversify itself, but do you see my point? If that doesn't bother you, then hey, awesome. Go read Kaiju number 8. I'm actually reading it week to week pretty non-committally, but you can see why that would turn people away or not make them as interested. It's the same thing that originally turned me off of reading Black Clover because of the initial similarities to Naruto. It's since diversified and made a name for itself, but it's hard to deny that the first chunk of Black Clover coming onto the scene faced massive criticism and complaints regarding the similarities between it and Naruto, the same complaints that we're seeing now between Kaiju number 8 and Attack on Titan. If you don't put your own individuality into your manga regarding the story, you'll likely face these same criticisms. The other part of individuality is making sure that your art doesn't copy other art styles, but that it's also splashing in its own flavor, even if it is similar to others. Take a look at both of these images. The first is from Berserk, and the second is from One Punch Man. Both characters here are finishing attacks. They're essentially in the same situation. Both pages are very detailed. but in their own unique and individual way that makes them stand out from the other. They both have a stunning amount of small details, primarily with the blood and gore of the page. Look at the movement of each with both characters' arms. The motion blur helps bring you from one side of the panel to the other, following the action. Look at their outfits as well. Miura has illustrated Guts' outfit to be highly detailed. Everywhere you look, you either see the shine and gleam of his black armor, or you see the coarse and rough leather that lines his massive chest. You see the straps that help tie it to Guts' gigantic body, and because of those small details, it looks somewhat functional and realistic, if not a bit excessive for the amount of weapons that Guts has. But again, that goes to show how to make your manga tell multiple purposes. See that Guts has a ridiculous amount of weapons on him. He's ready for any battle or any situation. The armor matches the power and ferocity of his gigantic sword. It stretches out behind him, and the blood and guts that are hanging above it add a sense of movement from the panel. With Murata and One Punch Man, there's a very deep attention to detail, but in a different way. He's detailed the way that the monster, Vaccine Man, explodes in the background, but Saitama in the foreground is very neatly detailed as well. What makes it different from Berserk is that it has its own unique style of detail. I can see the folds and shadows in his cape. I can see how the zipper on his chest is suspended in the air due to the ferocity of his attack. I can see the stitching on Saitama's glove, but because of One Punch Man's style and approach to manga, Saitama himself is purposely left to be more quote-unquote plain with his own face and expression. It's just the right amount of detail to not be excessive, which would take away from the joke. If you were reading One Punch Man for the first time, you might expect him to have a panel where he appears like Guts, looking totally badass and detailed to the bone. He's covered in blood and debris, but that's not the goal of One Punch Man in this instance. Both manga are going for different things. Berserk is going for shock and awe, and One Punch Man is going for comedy. While the art is similar in its level to detail, the end goal, and in turn the style in which they are presented, are different. The final two rules that we'll be talking about today, in my opinion, are closely related. They are 1. Making sure that each panel is deliberate and ensuring that not a single one could be removed, and 2. Making sure that they give a preview of what's to come. It's getting rid of extra panels that don't add anything to the situation in hand, and further, ensuring that you are doing the most with the panels provided. Look at this example from Vinland Saga. In this scene, Thorfinn enters a camp and a guard tries to restrain him. Let's focus on the action after the guard reaches out. First, we see Thorfinn reacting to the guard's hand. The flash that we see at the bottom of the panel is Thorfinn quickly and precisely throwing his hand down to do what? We see in the next panel. We see that the flash from the first panel brings us here, where Thorfinn's hand grabs onto the finger of the guard in a very controlling manner. Thorfinn's hand is moving up and in the opposite direction of the guard's hand. Where is he bringing it? In the next panel, Thorfinn locks the guards up and around behind the guard's back. You can also see the shock of the other guard's face, letting us know that it happened very quickly. In Thorfinn's other hand, he has pulled out a knife. He's skilled, he's able to do multiple things at once when it comes to combat. In the final panel, we see that Thorfinn has locked the guard's elbow and hand in place, having complete control of the situation. To show why each panel is necessary and why they lead into the next panel so well, let's experiment a little. Let's take each panel out one at a time. We're going to purposely make it a bad layout, and you'll see how it can negatively affect the reading experience. If we take the first panel out, we wonder what happened. We remember the guard reaching out, but to grab onto the finger right away? How far into the reach was it done? How quickly did it happen? The first panel might be the weakest in the argument I'm trying to make, but I would say that it serves a purpose of having us pay attention to the action sequence and take it one step at a time. It also shows us how quick on his feet Thorfinn is, and how if there's a combat situation, then he can know how to handle it. If we take out the second panel, we run into a problem of missing the middle part of what's happening. The flow and path of the action doesn't match. First we see Thorfinn's hand going down and across his body, but then in the next panel it would be up and around the guard's back. We're missing a critical step where we go back up and change direction. If the third panel is taken out, we miss the climax of the action. We see that the finger was grabbed to control the wrist, and in the next panel, we would have to take some time to realize what happened. It's a grab, then you see the guard's hand on Thorfinn's shoulder. What happened to step B? We went from A to C, so how does his hand turn over like that? We weren't given enough clues to follow the action. Finally, with the fourth panel, we feel like the action doesn't really have a way to sit and settle. When the final panel is included, it shows that Thorfinn not only initiated the combat, but he also directed and stopped it to the point where he was in a position of power and control. When we're looking at the other piece of the manga reading experience that I mentioned earlier, which was making sure that no panel can be taken out, that's what we're looking at here. Every panel is crucial, and if there was an extra panel in the middle of the action detailing the landscape or Thorfinn's allies reacting to what he's doing, it would throw a major speed bump into the reading experience. Everything here is needed, and because it's needed and done well, it gives us a preview of what's to come. So we finally have all of the rules from Hirohiko Araki, have an interesting title and premise, seize unclaimed territory, follow the who is doing what, when and where, why and how rule, make it your own with an individual style, is by ensuring that each panel is necessary and gives a preview of what's to come. So all of these elements come together to make good manga, but I should clarify something as well. Before you go off and start judging the next manga you read with a fine-tooth comb and making notes of where it meets and doesn't meet these rules, you should know that in my opinion, and in someone else's opinion that you might care more about, Hirohiko Araki, if manga doesn't follow these to the letter, that doesn't mean it's bad manga. This is more of a list of rules that allow you to say, hey, I understand the point of that rule, but I don't know if I would necessarily agree in X case. That's fine. That is totally your prerogative. But at least you know the rule. If you don't include these, that doesn't mean that you have a bad manga, but if you want to make a good manga, you should probably start here. As a final caveat to that though, this is what most authors try to use. There's a reason why it is a standard in the industry. It's here where you should take a look at one of your favorite series, or a classic series, or maybe a brand new series, and see how professionals in the industry use these rules in their own works. You'd be surprised how many professional authors can't make it work or do end up breaking the rules in ways that negatively impact the manga itself. It's no reason on its own to dislike a manga, but it's something to keep in mind for the technical side of things. These technical aspects help the pieces of manga come together like a puzzle, nicely slotting in with each other to help guide you into finishing that same puzzle. You might not get all the pieces right away, but when you do, you'll see that these rules help to make a panel flow. So if you like this video, please like and subscribe. Comment down below if you learned anything, and let me know if you have a recommendation for a new series or panel you want me to cover. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. This has been Panel Flow.